benvenuti di nuovo su un nuovo episodio di Stanley Parable 2. Nello scorso episodio abbiamo visto un sacco di cose, abbiamo visto l'introduzione del secchio, abbiamo visto, non voglio vedere la cutscene, abbiamo visto una persona che è diventata matta per il secchio, che è stata probabilmente presa da qualcuno, tipo Camorra, una roba del genere. Abbiamo quasi preso tutte le mini statuine di Stanley, che adesso andrò a prendere, e
All of
nient'altro.
his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had
Non
simply
prendo il
missed the memo.
secchio, vado direttamente nella stanza di sinistra,
When
destra.
Stanley came to a set of two open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
No,
The lounge was sublime, a work of art. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
nope.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Posso scendere lo stesso anche senza il secchio? Ok, questo è nuovo, però lo faccio dopo. Sì, dai, lo faccio dopo.
Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley.
I'm sorry.
Really? I was in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Why, I don't know how to convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove
Lo
it.
sapevo.
And
Voilà.
there it is. The last Stiggly Wiggly. Savor this moment, Stanley.
Stingy Wiggly.
This is a real accomplishment. This is doing something just for the sake of doing it. Where so
Sì.
many people expect to be rewarded for the most trivial achievements, you've insisted that a job well done is its own reward. I would tell you that I'm proud of you for collecting them all, but that would be like a reward, and we can't have that. So, instead I'll just say, it's done. We're all done here. And now we can go to whatever the hell you were doing before you hunted for figurines.
Ok.
Now listen carefully, this is important. Stanley walked through the red door. Oh, thank God you are willing to listen to me. Do you see that I really have wanted you to be happy all this time? The problem is all these choices. The two of us always trying to get somewhere that isn't here. Running and running and running, just the way you're doing right now. Don't you see that it's killing us, Stanley? I wanted to stop. We would both be so much happier if we just stopped. And I think I have a solution. Here, let me show you.
Vamos.
What do we want? What are we looking for?
No, no, no. No. Non l'avrei mai fatto comunque, mi dispiace, no. Wow, il mio cervello.
Stanley, I'm sorry, but I have to put a pause on things. It's those figurines, those figglers. I haven't stopped thinking about them since you nabbed every last one. Wasn't it just the most intrinsically fulfilling moment of your entire life? Didn't it fill you to the brim with inner richness? Yes, I know we're supposed to be telling a story, but won't you please indulge me with one more trip back to the memory zone? I would love nothing more than to revisit the figurines. Just one more time.
Va bene. Siamo ritornati qua. Che bello, cacchio. Wow, che cosa succede al mio cervello? Un po' esagerato, ma va bene. Now remembering when Stanley found the collectibles. Ok, quindi niente, abbiamo pure... Dai, dimmi che posso scavalcare ste rocce, voglio andare nell'area aperta. La libertà, voglio la libertà. Vabbè, fammi andare a vedere le... Ah, qua sotto. Ok.
Here's where it all began.
Sì.
The first collectible. Back then, we had no idea of how many of them we'd find. Sure, it said 6 right there on the screen, but how could we know for certain? We were so innocent. We'll never be like that again, Stanley.
Come siete su... Io ho fatto matematica e sono in quarta superiore, non penso funzioni così. Ah, ah, ok, fa un ripercorso di tutte quelle
And
che ho
here
preso.
was a second Stanley. I'll be honest, back then I had no faith in you to find any of them, let alone
Ah,
6. But you
grazie.
continue to surprise me in all sorts of mundane, unremarkable ways.
Ok, qua è la
Okay,
fiera.
let's do a little quiz.
No.
Which of these rooms was the room you found your third mini Stan? Can you remember?
Qua, nel bagno. Era nel bagno.
Hey, that's exactly right. It was here in the boss's bathroom. It was the third one. You picked it up, and then after that, you had 3 of them. I'm glad these moments are so crystal clear in your memory, but I shouldn't be surprised. After all, science tells us that it's impossible to forget your third time doing anything.
Non penso funzioni così, ma vabbè.
Let's see, what came next?
C'è quella dell'ufficio del cap.
Oh
Cosa?
yes, we found a Figley in this pink room. Oh well,
No.
I can't actually say I remember being in this room, but it's here in the memory zone, so it must have happened.
Ok, questo è strano forte. Va bene. Oh, oh,
This was
oh,
the fifth mini stand,
wow.
and this one was really something special. It was in the warehouse. I remember it so clearly. In fact, because this one is particularly special to me, I made a little video to commemorate the occasion. Enjoy.
Come? Cos'è? Siamo tornati nel 2010? Mamma mia, che belli! Quanto me li ricordo i video così! È mini Stan! Credits, il narratore, Stanley. C, del narratore.
Takes you back, doesn't it? I spent a lot of time making that video, but it was 8 minutes I wouldn't have spent on anything else.
Ok, avevo intenzione di buttarmi di sotto, ma lui ha capito subito e quindi non mi butterò di sotto. Ok, bellissima transizione. Mamma mia, che transizioni sto gioco, però. Di qua. E qui giustamente c'era
And now, Stanley,
l'ultima.
then we came to the last collectible, the final figurine, right here by the red and blue doors. This memory is the most distinct and clear in my mind, perhaps because it was the one that happened more recently than all the others.
Ok.
Who can truly say how the mind works? All I know is that this is the moment where you picked up a Figley and I thought to myself, yes, that's all of them. They're all collected. It was a moment unlike any other. Except for the other moments picking up figurines, which it was exactly like.
12 su 6. Bene. Quindi basta, è finito qua? Ok. Oh.
And then
Oh, oh,
there was no
oh.
more, because we've caught up to the present
Whoa.
moment. Nothing left to do but move onward into the future. Goodbye, memory zone.
Ah, ok. È durato relativamente poco. Va bene, un altro finale fatto.
No, I'm not done. I'm not ready to move on.
Come,
Stop
scusa?
the loading screen. Isn't there some way we can stay here, keep enjoying these figurines? Let's just go backwards. We'll do the memory zone
Perché?
again from the opposite direction. See how that feels.
Ok.
Okay,
Quindi...
yes, the room with the red and blue doors. I remember this. I must say, of all the figurines we looked at in our initial tour of the memory zone, this one is the most distinct and clear in my mind. Let's keep
Grazie.
going, I want more. And here's where I made that video. Don't you remember the video we watched?
No, non vo...
Yes, I love that video.
Sì. Questa stanza qua che io non ho mai capito che cos'è, non lo
Still
voglio
don't remember the
sapere.
pink room, Stanley. Still no memory of this one. Good room, though. A solid room.
Adesso il bagno.
These really were a treat to hunt down. You know, if there had been any kind of reward for finding all of these, it really would have muted the intrinsic joy of collecting them. I'm very glad we resisted the temptation. Next one.
Ok, c'è qua sotto le scale. E l'ultima che era quella
This
nella
was our
zona.
second Figley. Don't you remember? Yes, I remember it too. The past is truly a wonderful thing. Why does anyone ever choose to leave it? Keep going.
Certe volte anche io sono d'accordo che vorrei ritornarmi al passato.
This is it. The very first one we found in the exhibit where I introduced you to the figurines. Oh, I want more memories, Stanley. I want to keep going. What else is there? What came before this?
Sono ritornate alla fiera? Davvero? C'è qualcosa che non va. Sì, c'è qualcosa che non va. Il cerchio del salto?
Look, it's the terrible new content that we were originally sold on. I remember hating it back then, but time does put a rosy filter on everything. In fact, I dare say I'm actually quite fond of it now. Look how much fun the past is. I want more. More memories.
Immagino che torniamo indietro. Ah sì,
Yes,
le due porte,
the two
esatto.
doors. Who could have forgotten that? A classic memory, this one.
E poi c'è il mio ufficio, la primissima
And before
cosa.
everything else, there was your office.
Giusto. E basta.
Is there anything else? Was there something that came before your office?
No, a
There's
parte il
something I
titolo.
feel I can remember. I can remember.
Oh.
I can remember.
Che è successo? Che è successo?
I'm remembering something now.
Eh?
I remember before this whole story got started. Back then I was different. I used to make big decisions. I was passionate. I was skeptical. I weighed each decision with profound thoughtfulness. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped making decisions. I became lazy. And I came up with a character named Stanley to do my thinking for me. He would make the decisions. He would decide which way to go. I would cheer him on as he collected figurines for no reason. Why did I invent Stanley? Was I lonely? Yes, perhaps that's it. Perhaps I needed to imagine I had companionship. And Stanley really did make for a wonderful companion, even if he was a fiction. But I suppose it's grown old. I want to think for myself again. I want to go back to how it used to be. Yes, I can be on my own again. I can do it. I'll be stronger this time. I'll take care of myself. I don't need Stanley anymore. Oh, but he truly was so much fun to play with. You know what? Since we're in the memory zone, how about one more good memory? Let's go back just once and give Stanley one more run of the office, and then I'll retire him for good.
Davvero?
I did enjoy telling his story so very much. Okay, here we go. This is the story of a man named Stanley.
Ah, ricomincia tutto a capo, wow. Ok, ha pensato bene. Questo era molto bello come finale. Bellissimo.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. The good old bucket. Just Stanley and the bucket. Off on another thrilling adventure together.
No,
Stanley
avrei dovuto
touched
fare...
the bucket tight.
No.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley
Ok.
decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Ah sì, quanto divertente.
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well.
Zitto, zitto,
Perhaps
whoa,
he
whoa,
wanted to
whoa,
stop by
whoa,
the
whoa,
employee
whoa.
lounge first, just to admire it. Standing now in this incredible room, Stanley for the first, but eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Vediamo come è stata senza il secchio. Perché prima non si poteva andare.
Stanley had now gotten himself so far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off the beaten path that it seemed the office had begun. So far off. You didn't think I was actually just a recording, did you?
Bastardo, ci ho sperato.
Explanation that would be. All the back and forth between you and me, all the absurd adventures we've been through, and it all turns out I'm just a tape recording? It was all just in Stanley's head. I bet that's the kind of twist you think is revelatory. I bet each and every time you watch a movie where it turns out all to be in the main character's imagination, you must absolutely bolt off the couch in pure shock at the phenomenal and intricate storytelling. It must be so simple to be you. Life being an unending waterfall of surprises and delights. How much more exciting you must find the world than the rest of us do. Now I've become sad. Look what you've done to me. This is all your fault.
Ma l'ha fatto tutto lei. Vabbè.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room.
E mo facciamo gli
Where are we
altri.
going today? The bucket asked. Stanley just smiled. Anywhere they went together would be perfectly fine with him. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No.
No, said the bucket. Don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Good, said the bucket. Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do. Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. But Stanley feared that any path he walked might lead to the separation of himself and the bucket, his dearest friend. So he threw himself to his death, that they might die in one another's arms. How deeply touching.
Ah. Ok.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
No.
A good bucket, a strong bucket, a humble bucket, a committed bucket, a bucket of culture and distinction. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Well, no, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room. No, said the bucket.
Ok.
Don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else.
Ma dobbiamo farne di due là dentro.
Yes, good, said the bucket. Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do. Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked. In here, said the bucket. Go into this dark room over here. Stanley once again obeyed blindly.
Ok.
Now pick up the phone, said the bucket. Pick up the phone and it will take us back home, where we can go about life together.
Ce n'ho.
Whoa, hold on. Why did you unplug the phone? Were you trying to resist the bucket's orders? Stanley, I was joking. Obviously, the bucket isn't talking to you and telling you to do things. Buckets can't talk. It was a joke. Don't you get the joke? It's funny, Stanley. A talking bucket. Can't you see? Oh, goodness. I must have really bungled up the delivery if you actually took me seriously. Where did I mess up the joke? Should I have paused for longer or spoken quicker? Comedic timing is so difficult. I wish I were better at it. But there isn't exactly an instructional video on comedy that one can watch to fully... Oh, wait, yes, there is. It's sitting right here. Let's take a look.
Davvero? Un video sulla commedia.
What is comedic timing? What is comedic timing? How does it work? How long should it last? How can it be used to effectively silence your political enemies?
No.
And more importantly, can it be taught in its entirety within 90 seconds?
Assolutamente sì.
Thankfully, the answer to all of these questions is yes.
Yeah.
Let's dive deeper. If you've ever told a joke or made someone laugh, in all likelihood, you did it while standing 50 to 80 centimeters from them in a room of no more than 76 degrees Fahrenheit, with one of your arms raised straight upward at a 15-degree angle from your body. These are the optimal conditions for good comedic timing.
Ok.
To begin the joke, start by stating and spelling your name. Next, provide a brief synopsis of the joke, including the specific times at which the recipient of the joke will laugh, and then spell out your name a second time. With these steps complete, it's time to begin the humor. Speak the entire joke in no more than 18 seconds and no less than 13 and a half. Pausing only for bathroom breaks when necessary. When the joke has concluded, it is customary to inform your listener that the joke is over by declaring in your loudest possible voice, "I'm Dunny with the funny." Let's practice screaming, "I'm Dunny with the funny" now.
I'm Donny with the funny. Ok.
Good. This saying is a perfect example of expectations management, which is the cornerstone of good comedy. Finally, it's time to hand out surveys.
Come i
Collecting
questionari.
hard data from your audience on how rapt they were throughout the joke is the only way to grow or learn as a comedian. An effective survey should be no less than 10 pages long and should include the same question reprinted several times, just to ensure the survey taker is actually paying attention and not simply filling in answers at random. And that's all there is. With these strategies at your disposal, you'll have audiences doubled over in laughter and even tripled over in laughter in no time at all. Just remember to let them stop laughing at some point, you gut-busting little scamp. After all, we're each of us needed on the front lines of the war to fight the
Come da guerra.
12-legged invader who threaten our very existence and to very likely die in a hailstorm of bullets and mandibles.
Cos'è? È
All of us
diventato un
must
film
be prepared to give our
fantascientifico.
lives to this noble cause, just as our children must do after us, and their children after them. Godspeed, and may Earth reign supreme.
Ok. Suppongo.
Hey, goodness, this video is a little outdated, isn't it? Well, no matter. I think the fundamentals of proper comedic timing are still as relevant today as they were back then. So with that in mind, I believe the only way forward is for us to return to the two doors and walk through all of this again, so I can try telling my story with more appropriate comedic delivery. Come along, let's head back.
Davvero? Sta durando più del previsto, né?
I can feel it. This time, I'm really going to nail the delivery. You'll be in stitches. A talking bucket, you'll say? How ridiculous. How absurd. What a hilarious concept. The king of comedy. That's what you'll call me. Thank goodness we had the instructional video. Otherwise, who knows where we'd be right now. Well, I wouldn't be the king of comedy, that's for sure. The bucket spoke to Stanley. The bucket spoke.
The bucket spoke.
Oh, I'll figure it out on the fly. No need to overthink things.
Vediamo un po'. Ok.
Here we go. You ready? When Stanley and the bucket came to a set of 2 open doors, they entered the door on the left.
Ok.
What? We're back at the phone already.
Di già?
No. What's going on? There was supposed to be several rooms leading up to this. There was supposed to be a build-up to this point. A dramatic display of remarkable comedic wit which culminates in this scene with the phone. But now the timing's completely off. The joke will never land. Or not the way it was meant to. And it's all my fault. I must have forgotten that the phone room comes immediately after the 2 doors room. What an egregious mistake. I've made a fool of myself. I don't deserve the title of King of Comedy. I'm nothing. I'm not even the lowliest joke-telling whelp. I think
No, non è vero.
I need to go back and rewatch
No,
that
no, per
instructional
favore,
video.
non lo voglio rivedere quel video.
Yes, surely that will help me improve my...
No, no. Che c'è?
Here we go. You ready? When Stanley and the bucket came to a set of 2 open doors, they entered the door on the left.
Oh no, continua così all'infinito.
What? We're back at the phone already? No. Here we go. You ready? When Stanley and the bucket came to a set of 2 open doors, they entered the door on the left.
No.
What? We're back at the phone already? No.
Ah, proprio continua
Here we
così.
go. You ready? When Stanley and the bucket came to a set of 2
no.
open doors, they entered the door on the left.
Mi dispiace, narratore, mi dispiace.
No. You were supposed to go through the door on the right, leading back to the phone. Did you not even look at the instructional video? I think this is all covered very clearly. There's no way I can make the comedic timing work now. It's done. The joke is completely done and over. It's all your fault, Stanley. I'm going to be ridiculed in the community of other joke writers. I'm going to be shamed at every one of our meetings from now on. All because you couldn't watch a simple video and take a hint. Are you proud of yourself for bringing me down, Stanley? Are you proud?
Ah, no.
Stanley, you love the bucket so much it's like you... it's as though all of your other most prized possessions pale in comparison. Yes. Let me try that again, Stanley. I heard that you are pale with shame over how unabashedly in love with a bucket you are. No? Still not? Is it the delivery? Pale with shame. Pale with shame? Pale... What's another word to describe a bucket? Stanley, this bucket is so metal, I think I saw it playing guitar. No. We're getting away from making fun of Stanley's obsession with the bucket, which was the whole point of this. I'm no good at these jokes. I need more instructional videos. That's exactly what it is. That's what will make me the king of comedy again. More instructional videos. Let's see.
Ah, mi spiace per lui. Ok.
The meeting room. Yes, that's where everyone would be. Stanley just needed to get to the meeting room, and from then on, he would never be alone ever again. Ah, the embrace of an old friend. A weathered companionship that stands the test of time. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his... This was not the correct way to the
Ok,
meeting
facciamo
room.
anche
But
l'ultimo da
Stanley
quella
had felt the
parte.
bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Never mind. The bucket was wrong.
Ciao.
Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room. No, said the bucket. Don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift. Good, said the bucket. Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do. Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked. In here, said the bucket. Go into this dark room over here. Stanley once again obeyed blindly. Now pick up the phone. This is the sad story of a man named Stanley and his bucket. Once upon a time, I gave Stanley a bucket because I thought he was lonely and could use a friend. And then, very distressingly, he began to believe the bucket could speak to him. The Stanley Parable Reassurance Bucket was merely meant to provide the comforting glow of companionship. It doesn't literally talk and give you orders. Whatever Stanley is hearing the bucket say to him is just in his head. Lately, I've been concerned about him. Wouldn't you be concerned as well? To see him delusional like this, obsessing over an inanimate metal object? I want to say something to him, but I don't know how I can convince him. I don't know if he'll listen to me. Oh, I'll try anyway. Stanley, can you hear me? Listen to me. It's just a bucket. It can't think, it can't talk. All it will ever truly do for you is effectively transfer a liquid from one location to a different location. That's it. It doesn't do anything else. You see, he's not listening. He's still taking orders from the bucket. You know, once upon a time it was me he took orders from, me he trusted and listened to. Now all he cares about is his awful bucket, this stupid hunk of metal. It's sad, but I suppose he doesn't need me anymore. From now on, he's just going to cling to this bucket, this cold, empty bucket, this sort of shiny bucket. Well, I'll give it this. The bucket does have a nice shine to it. Yes, I suppose on closer inspection that it doesn't quite look like your average hardware store bucket. It's just a little more, what am I trying to say? Sturdier, more capable of transporting liquid. Like it would be better at moving an amount of water from one room to another. Oh my God, what am I saying? Better at carrying water from room to room. It's a bucket. It's literally just a bucket. Why do I feel some need to point out the ways in which it's so much more than just a regular bucket? Oh no, I'm having feelings for the bucket. No. What's going on? Why do I want to be with the bucket? Hear what the bucket has to say. Do anything it asks. What's wrong with me? I don't understand. Perhaps if I had the bucket, this would be less confusing. Yes, the bucket could tell me what to do in this troublesome situation. Stanley, give me the bucket. Give it to me. Give me the bucket, Stanley. I need it. Give it to me now. Give it or I'll...
Ok, era un finale
Already this was
inaspettato.
uncomfortable, and Stanley decided that as soon as he found a new space he felt safe in, that he would never leave it again in his life.
Ok, sono cambiati pure i dialoghi, riprendo il
The
secchio.
bucket made Stanley want to be a better man and a better co-worker. In time, perhaps, he would become both of those things. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Ho fatto tutti da questa parte, quindi iniziamo a fare questi da questa parte. Devo andare quello sotto le scale per primo e poi andrò a fare anche gli altri.
Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever.
Ok.
Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
No, facciamo questo qua
But
lunghissimo.
Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting
Okay.
he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. He looked down at the bucket in his arms. Am I crazy? He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing at all. That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd. And now he felt himself floating off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him.
Stanley! Stanley, it's me, the bucket.
Could it truly be? He rushed forward from room to room, passing by one bucket after the next. None of them were his. None of them were his special bucket.
Come to me, Stanley. Find me.
He had to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful. Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out. This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. Right away, she knew what the problem was. This man had no bucket. Of course he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself, my life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work.
Wow, questi sì che sono finali interessanti, né? C'è un telefono che squilla.
Hello. This is a recorded message scheduled either by you or a person in your place of work. The purpose of this message is to warn you about the dangers of recorded messages. If at any
Ok.
time you believe you are listening to a recorded message, please terminate it immediately and cease all flow of information from the recorded message into your perceptual sphere. Thank you, and have a pleasant day.
Ok. Tutto qui? Bene. Sì, ottimo.
Not everyone is so lucky to have a bucket, but Stanley is a very lucky fellow. Very lucky indeed. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Infatti ci sono già.
Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
Ok.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire if not for the soothing presence. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it that the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
Oh, wow, no. Ok, sapete cosa? Ci ho ripensato, questi qua li facciamo la prossima volta. No, non da capo, scemo. Non volevo fare da capo.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Ok. Nel prossimo episodio di Stanley Parable 2 epilogo. Ok, nella prossima parte di The Stanley Parable 2 faremo tutti gli eventi dell'ufficio col secchio e poi vediamo che cos'è sto epilogo. Va bene, ci vediamo. Adieu.